You're probably wondering why this video is back up again. Well, that's because the day before yesterday, I got an email saying that someone has flagged this video and asked for it to be removed. And guess what? The cucks at YouTube actually agreed with this. Now, seriously, I don't know on what grounds this was removed. I mean, I did not offend anyone. I didn't even swear, and I didn't break any community guidelines. All I did was give my opinion on a coronavirus. The fact that it was the opposite of Baldy Waldy here kind of instead does not matter. And I didn't break anything else. All of this is under fair use. I'm responding to a video. Like, seriously, what the hell? But regardless, I'm guessing that someone who did flag this video is a supporter of this bald and bankrupt wannabe. But well, if they actually agree with anything that he says, they should follow this.
I've long known about a certain alt-right element out there of anti-Chinese activists pretending to be interested in China. Normally, I encourage people to ignore them when they say things like, Chinese people don't care about their children.
Yeah, Well, really, by the fact that they instigated this kind of contradicts what they say and makes them a hypocrite. But regardless, I'm going to say that I will not be silenced, and I'm going to be re-uploading this video right here. And just one thing to say, the first person to comment on that video was the channel He Turned Into a Zombie. So just know he was the first commentator. Now, let's get back to this video, and I just want to reply to the person who flagged this video. Let's get to the video, asshole. Last time Nathan Rich became the topic of discussion here, you guys were actually supportive of the idea, the Nathan Rich sub-series, and here it is. I just have to say, this guy looks extremely high while talking. The only thing proving it otherwise is by actually listening to his voice. So if you watched his videos on mute, it would resemble that of a stoned person. But for today's topic, in case anyone has been living under a rock, a potential pandemic has come up in the world, and it is called the coronavirus. It has everyone on edge, and China has even declared a national emergency in some places. But like all international incidents, different sides tend to take on different perspectives of the virus and its handling. Some news networks go on a fear-mongering campaign, others go to extreme lengths to gain first-hand footage. There are some other examples, and then there's the Chinese media. Because, you know, the Chinese media is so reliable, it's a good idea to look at their side on how they handle their own crisis. After all, it's not like they're downplaying the entire thing. And one of their little bots is our old pal, Nathan Rich. Of course he's going to talk about the coronavirus. The first video he made about it is the most questionable one, and it's where he calls out, quote, lies about Western media coverage over the pandemic. Basically, half of the video is him downplaying the whole pandemic, and the other half is about him talking about something that has nothing to do with the topic at all. So let's just focus on his claim at the title, and then the lovely, weird claims he uses to downplay the incident.
I never really thought about English teachers before coming to China. I knew they existed. Some are actually teachers, but most are just random people with no qualifications and no life. They want to raise themselves out of poverty, so they take a job abroad.
I don't think moving to China is a good idea if you want to escape poverty.
Chinese people don't care about their children, because that's just pure racism that pretty much defeats itself.
Chinese people don't care about their children.
But when the same racist elements start to give medical advice to people in China, I take it seriously. So let's take a look at what this English teacher says about the coronavirus, shall we? China's coronavirus is much worse than you think. Is it? Because while I don't think people should be scared, I also think people already know it's pretty serious. But okay, wise one, teach me. Teach me just how bad it is. Teach me like you teach a child the word broom.
I was calling this amongst my Chinese friends that at some point the government or, Chinese people are going to attribute this new coronavirus, this new SARS, to America and say that America planted this on China. And yeah, that's going around in the WeChat circles right now.
You're right, man. Those Chinese government or Chinese people are so dumb, am I right? I mean, it's not like there's any evidence America was developing a virus exactly like this one years ago or anything, right? Oh, wait. So people speculating in a time of fear based on actual evidence is a thing. Weird. Now, of course, we don't have evidence of a crime being committed, which is why few take this kind of speculation seriously. But to ignore this as a remote possibility would be pretty dumb. I mean, the United States has absolutely been proven to infect populations with diseases. That's known. But more importantly, it would be inhuman. It's normal for humans to look for causes of diseases, like how people in the United States said the CIA created AIDS. I guess the Chinese aren't as stupid as you're portraying them after all. It turns out they're humans.
Oh, trust me, Nathan, the Chinese people are stupid if they make this claim. Now, I have to point out that he doesn't blatantly accuse the US of orchestrating this pandemic like how he does on other issues he's talked about on his channel, but he really does infer it, and he claims that it is a possibility. So let's get this accusation while it's still down. The very website that he shows is called The Scientists, and the authenticity can be questioned when, first of all, you can no longer find the article there. Second of all, the authenticity is also put into even more question when you consider that the same magazine states the coronavirus came from animals, contradicting Rich's claim. In regards to claiming that the disease is some kind of bioweapon, it came from an article in the Washington Post claiming that the pandemic was linked to a military laboratory in Wuhan. So if anyone was using the virus as a weapon, it was China, not the US. From then on, different claims were made by different people about who might be responsible for the whole ordeal. But regardless of what you think it was, this claim was just found to be another conspiracy theory discovered by the University of Melbourne. Even a Chinese scientist debunked the theory and said that the virus may have originated from bats. Then he talks about how the US government infected people with diseases back in the 1950s and 1960s, but what he fails to mention is that most of these tests were done in controlled environments, and the volunteers, however controversial it was, such as the Tuskegee syphilis experiment in 1953, and some tests didn't even involve people, like Operations Big Buzz, Dropkick, and Mayday. Operation Big Itch only even had guinea pigs used as test subjects. And let's not also forget that China has taken its own fair share of unethical treatment with its own genetic editing programs. So yeah, if the Chinese people and government want to label this as the US government's fault, I would say they are stupid.
And did you call this new SARS? No, it's not the same as the virus we called SARS. It's not a new strand or new strain of SARS. Or at least that's according to the World Health Organization. But then again, I don't know, you are an English teacher, so maybe you're right and they're wrong.
Maybe Nathan doesn't understand figuratism. People are calling this the new SARS because it's the last disease that came from China and spread in a similar fashion. No one is saying that it's the same virus. Being a China bot has really taken a toll on his brain, so much so that he can't even understand basic labels anymore. He does more of that throughout the first half of the video and also tries to downplay the pandemic.
This cousin of SARS is a virus that causes respiratory problems, but can also cause diarrhea, fatigue, shortness of breath, respiratory distress, and kidney failure.
For some strange reason, you've added this diarrhea symptom to the novel coronaviruses list. Projecting, maybe? Thank God no one takes this video seriously, otherwise you could have people lining up at hospitals because some idiot in America told them he understood Chinese issues. The symptoms, according to people who actually know what they're talking about, are these.
And if Nathan had read more from the CDC, the coronavirus does report symptoms such as sputum production, headache, hemoptysis, and diarrhea, albeit they are less common. You don't have to be an expert to understand the symptoms. All Nate had to do was read more on the CDC's findings of the virus. And it's funny for him to call this video insignificant when the video has 1 million views while his has only a tenth of that much.
The death rate with SARS, well, at least this brand of SARS, it seems to range from about 0 to 50% of the cases.
50%? Oh my God! I've just learned from this English teacher that the novel coronavirus is as deadly as the bubonic plague. I have no reason to doubt this guy other than all the fake stuff he said so far, but just out of curiosity, let me compare what people way more stupid and less qualified than him say. Let's see here. 6,062 cases. So there must be upwards of 3,000 deaths. Strange, because it says here there's been 132 deaths. That works out to be about 2%.
More lack of listening. He said 0 to 50% of deaths. The numbers he gave estimate how high the rate of deaths can go. As of February 2020, the number of infected is 24,000, while the number of deaths is 493. It has slightly increased, especially when you consider that 13% are in critical condition. Now, before anyone accuses me of fear-mongering, most of these figures are in China. If you live outside China, especially the West, it is highly unlikely you will get this disease. But if you really are scared about contracting it, I recommend you watch Dr. Mike's video on how to be safe.
I want you to keep this phrase in your head: alert, but not anxious. This Wuhan virus or novel coronavirus is really a potential threat to us here in the United States and is not a crisis yet by any means. So again, alert, not anxious. Let's talk about what to do if you're worried that you may have this novel coronavirus. First of all, you would have to have been exposed to someone in China, like you had to be in the Wuhan area, or have been in contact with someone from that area within the last 2 weeks. Otherwise, it's highly, highly unlikely that you have this virus. But let's say you are still worried. What's the first thing you should do? Call your healthcare provider before going to get care. Why? So they can prepare the waiting area, that they can isolate it as best as possible, take you through the proper protocols to make sure that those who are susceptible are out of harm's way, because you don't want to get people sick if you truly do have this virus. Next, they'll ask you a series of questions to see if you meet the criteria for further testing. If you do, they'll send out a sample to the CDC headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. That test takes about 24 to 48 hours to complete. It's called the PCR test. During that time, you'll stay in an isolation area in the hospital, which is usually a negative pressure room to prevent the virus particles from escaping. Again, whether you have the novel coronavirus, the flu, or any other virus, the treatment remains supportive care. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure that your body's immune system can fight off whatever virus is affecting you in a given moment. Here's some practical advice to keep you safe from this novel coronaviruses and any other infections that are out there in a given moment. It is flu season after all, and the flu virus is also very dangerous. Number 1, stay alert but not anxious. I've said it before, I'm saying it again because I do not want you to panic. Do not travel to China or the Wuhan area unless it's absolutely mandatory. 3, if you were in China within the last 2 weeks and you're experiencing fever, cough, or shortness of breath, please contact your healthcare provider as soon as possible. 4, make sure to wash your hands frequently throughout the day. That means 20 seconds with soap and water. If that's not available, you can use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer, of course. 5, do your best in avoiding touching your mucous membranes. That includes your eyes, nose, and your mouth. These bad boys right here are the most common areas for infected particles. And then when you put them on your mucous membranes, that's how they get in your body. 6, if you're gonna cough or sneeze, do it into a tissue and then throw that tissue out. 7, clean high traffic areas. If you're gonna be using a public workspace, wipe it down first. It's a simple rule of thumb that I like to recommend to all of my patients. 8, do your best to avoid contact with those who are sick. If you see someone coughing or sneezing, do your best to keep at least 6 feet in between you. That's generally how far sneeze and cough particles can travel. 9, if you're sick, please stay home. It doesn't matter if you have the flu or the common cold. By staying home, you're decreasing the spread of that virus, you're decreasing viral load, you're making the community safer by staying home.
Being brought on by seafood at a wet market.
Brought on by seafood at a wet market. Hang on. So what you're telling all your anti-Chinese followers is that seafood, which is dead, is the source of the virus. Hold the press, everyone. I know that at the time he made this video, medical experts thought that either snakes or bats were the source. Living snakes or living bats. But no, screw that. According to this kid, the virus is actually a zombie virus. It comes from dead seafood, magically, and infects anyone who breathes dead seafood air. Yeah, I don't think you really get how viruses work, teacher. I mean, according to Scientific American, quote, no one has ever reported finding a coronavirus infecting aquatic animals. You get that? No coronavirus has ever been found in any aquatic animal ever. Did you even research this video, or are you just literally making it up as you go? And anyway, Wow, I'm only 1 minute into this video? How does anyone watch this drivel? Okay, gotta go on.
If you've been to a Chinese wet market, you will know exactly how a megavirus or a bacterial infection could begin here.
I mean, it's like every sentence is intentionally laced with stupidity. The way a megavirus outbreak could happen is there are live animals. The end. Don't need anything to do with wet market or anything else.
I wonder where he got that information from, because back in December 2019, initial findings of the virus were linked to multiple animals, which did include bats and snakes, but also included aquatic animals. More specifically, it was linked to the Huanan seafood wholesale market. You can check the citations from all the official sources. Now, while it is true that viruses need a living host in order to replicate because they are not living organisms, it is possible for them to remain stable in a deceased organism for some time. Rabies, for example, can stay in a dead animal for up to 24 hours, which is why if you see roadkill, you shouldn't touch it. Then he talks about how the SARS virus was handled in both Hong Kong and China back in the early 2000s, which stems into the argument about how well the Chinese government handles the disease, and boy does he kneel down and follow them like a poodle.
When the 2008 Sichuan earthquake happened that killed 70,000 people, the officials knew why and shut down all communication, which ended up in more deaths.
Wow, finally something that is true. I mean, you weren't even close with the death count, but definitely the government shut down all communications, which caused more deaths. So you're saying Chinese people didn't know there was an earthquake and people just all laid around dying while no one cared because no one knew? Wow, that's an evil China you're talking about. Let me tell you about the China I'm talking about. I'm talking about the China here in the real world. Many websites converted their homepage to black and white. Sina.com and Sohu. Major internet portals limited their homepages to news items and removed all advertisements. Chinese video sharing websites Youku and Tudou displayed a black background and placed multiple videos showing earthquake footage and news reports. The Chinese version of MSN, cn.msn.com, also displayed banner ads about the earthquake and the relief efforts. Other entertainment websites, including various gaming sites such as the Chinese service World of Warcraft, had shut down altogether or had corresponding links to earthquake donations. Casinos in Macau closed down. All mainland Chinese television stations canceled all regularly scheduled programming, displayed their logo in grayscale, and replaced their canceled programs with live earthquake footage from CCTV1 for multiple days after the quake. Even pay television channels such as Channel V had their programs suspended. Strange how different the reality is from your dystopian hell on earth description.
Which is true in all sense, but the Chinese government only did so after it was evident that there was an earthquake. At this point, the government's response to the earthquake is being compared to that of the response to the coronavirus, which is accurate and it is bad. While in the last month, the Chinese have done very well in containing the virus, initially the Communist Party tried to cover up or at least downplay the disease. At first, there was little coverage of the outbreak at all. Bodies of the deceased were cremated and never reported to having the virus. And let's not forget about the actions of the Chinese government in the early days when medical staff and journalists were arrested or silenced if they spoke out and were accused of spreading rumors. This is something you won't see in China's domestic media, especially when Chinese health officials are clueless themselves.
With the epidemic of the coronavirus dominating headlines, Chinese health officials should be the ones we turn to for up-to-date information. Or so you'd think. On January 29th, two senior health officials were asked a set of basic questions about the virus during an interview in Huanggang, a city to the east of Wuhan. State broadcaster CCTV sat down with Tang Xihong, chief of the city's health commission, and Chen Mingxing, director of the city's Center for Disease Control and Prevention. However, they either couldn't answer the questions or couldn't agree.
它有总量能接待多少人？
因为我们有一个医疗的，专门有一个医疗的
100是吧？
我记得是260左右。
不是，到底是多少
100是吗？
多少人？
现在的时候多少人呢？我不太清楚。
因为医生 是吧？让他说这种嘛，就说是一。
But they are not the only ones to suffer a media mishap. This guy here, Sheng Wenjian, the Communist Party secretary of quarantine Chiba City, was caught wearing his surgical mask incorrectly during an inspection of his city's response to the virus. Worst of all, at a press conference on the 26th of January, the governor of Hebei province didn't even wear a mask. The Hebei secretary did, however, he too didn't cover his nose, and the mayor wore his inside out.
Then let's also talk about how the doctor who tried to warn the media, Dr. Li Wenliang, was silenced.
Some warnings were ignored or silenced. Let's focus on this doctor who was working at Wuhan Central Hospital. He noticed 7 cases that he thought looked like SARS. That's a virus that led to a global epidemic in 2003. And in December, he posted a warning about a potential outbreak in a chat group with fellow medics. Shortly afterwards, he was summoned by police and accused of making false statements and being told he'd severely disturbed the social order. He was then given this document to sign, and while most of it actually involved language from the authorities rather than from him, he was told, "We solemnly warn you, if you keep being stubborn with such impertinence and continue this illegal activity, you will be brought to justice. Is that understood?" Underneath it, Dr. Li wrote, "Yes, I do." Well, from there, in January, officials in Wuhan were insisting that only those who came into contact with infected animals could catch this virus. That wasn't true. Also, no guidance was issued to protect doctors. And then Dr. Li fell ill. But it wasn't until 10 days later, on the 20th of January, that China actually declared an emergency. By the end of January, Dr. Li posted this picture with the words, "Finally diagnosed." He had the virus.
Yes, he is still in the hospital for the virus. It is also suspected that China is still not giving the truth, as people are seen keeling all over the streets, which leads to speculation that the death toll is severely underreported. Gee, Nathan, I wonder why you haven't mentioned any of this. Well, we all know why. His social credit score might go down. Now, for a long time after that, they go completely off topic and continue talking about government response, which leads me to the part close to the end.
A huge chunk of the population, especially the people that grew up in the lost generation, do not believe in Western medicine or even very basic elements of bacteria or viruses.
Wrong! They believe in bacteria and viruses. In fact, I've never once met a single Chinese person that doesn't believe any Western medicine works. Ever. They just believe that pharmaceutical medications aren't always the answer to everything. Doesn't mean they don't understand bacteria and viruses. I really don't understand how anyone could take this guy seriously about China. If I want to learn something about the etymology of the word mop, I'll ask him. But China, he knows nothing. God, when does this video end?
Because the rest of the video is just him repeating all the response stuff and victimizing Chinese people, things we've already talked about in the video. So it will end after this clip. And not to sound too blabby, but for a long time now, Chinese people have had a distrust of Western medicine, especially in rural areas. Many people would rather turn to traditional antiviral herbs, some even claiming that will stop the coronavirus. So there we go. It's actually easy to see that even the good old Nathan Rich can be one-sided in his rants on China. To him and other China bots out there, you can easily see this pandemic isn't a result of foreign intervention, but a mistake that happened by their own hand, because they are most definitely trying to hide it.
This is how anti-Chinese racism spreads. People like Serpent and Lawai86, who claim to be objective, inserting anti-Chinese angles into their speech.
Yeah, so what can I say? Please say something bad about China, Mr. Rich. I wonder what the topic would be. It's definitely not going to be about how bad the Chinese Communist Party is, or about the truly negative effects of the coronavirus.